What's good, everyone? It's March 20th of 2025. In today's video, we're going to talk about the death of former F1 team boss Eddie Jordan at the age of 76. Now, on my channel, my last 3 videos before this one have all discussed the major riddle between basketball player Michael Jordan and Pope Francis, the first pope to be a member of the Jesuit order. This manifested in several ways. First, we got a pile-up in Austin, Texas. And then the next day, Michael Jordan's championship banners were removed due to damage from a rock concert. Michael Jordan owns a NASCAR team, and Josh Berry picked up his first win in NASCAR, so I made a video on how that's connected to the riddle. Well, after all this talk about Jordan, now we get the death of another former racing team owner, Eddie Jordan, at the age of 76. So in this video, we'll take a deep dive into the astronomical numerology that surrounds this news story, Eddie Jordan dying of bladder cancer at the age of 76. Now, my first post on Formula One this year talked about the upcoming Australian Grand Prix, which was held this past weekend. And that video and that post focused on a driver named Oscar Piastri, one of 2 McLaren drivers. And I legitimately did think he was going to win, and you could make a case that he was the fastest on the track. However, the main reason I talked about Oscar Piastri in this video is because his name sounds like Oscar Pistorius. Oscar Pistorius is a South African sprinter who has since been convicted of killing his girlfriend, shooting her to death in the bathroom. And with all this talk about South Africa, I thought it was interesting that Eddie Jordan died in the nation of South Africa. So while the hint I picked up wasn't pointing to the winner of the race, it was pointing, apparently, to the death of Eddie Jordan in the country of South Africa. Jordan's F1 team was called Jordan Grand Prix. And throughout their 15 years in the sport, they won 4 races. And we're just going to look at the first and last races that they won later on in this video to show how these were extremely by the numbers. Now, the last Grand Prix that Jordan ever ran was in China. And it just so happens that the Chinese Grand Prix is the race that's being held this upcoming weekend. So a lot of synchronicity to the riddles I've been talking about. And let's dive in, because the number on Michael Jordan's jersey, 23, the one we see all over the world, is going to be the first one we talk about before we get to this 76 in the headline. So Eddie passed away today, March 20th, which in South Africa and his home country of Ireland would be written as 20/3 on the calendar. In the alphabetic order, the phrase total lunar eclipse equals 203. Now, in numerology, zeros are ignored. So this represents the number 23. Consider how his initials MJ equal 23. He first went to college at North Carolina, 203 reverse, and then played for the Washington Wizards after leaving Chicago, which also equals 230. And think about how both Washington and Wizards starts with W, the 23rd letter. Pi Day also has Gematria of 230. So does the name Bergoglio, which is the real last name of Pope Francis. Brown lunation also equals 230, and we'll see how the moon is heavily coded into this story in the second part of this video. But the digits 203. This is also a dialing code here in the United States, and the 203 area code covers New Haven, Connecticut, which is home to Yale University and their infamous Skull and Bones Society, which, once again, are heavily connected to this story. From today's date, March 20th, to Yale's October 9th founding date is 203 days. So in addition to all the 203s up here with the date of his death, dying 203 days before Yale's anniversary. Another important item to note is that Eddie Jordan was Irish, born in Dublin, and his middle name is Patrick. On Cody's channel a few days ago, in a video that appears to have since disappeared from YouTube, yeah, it's not here anymore. But he talked about how the St. Patrick's Day deportation flights were all connected to Donald Trump and his mercurial birthday. Of course, Mercury, the god of transportation. And on the date, Donald Trump turned 327 mercurial years old. On St. Patrick's Day, he was evicting the snakes out of the United States. And in the history of St. Patrick, in the lore of St. Patrick, I should say, he's responsible for leading the snakes out of Ireland. So there's been this Irish theme going on, connected to Mercury. And no doubt this is part of that riddle as well. So Eddie's death, once again, in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, with capital letters applied. Cape Town, South Africa gives us Gematria of 322. This, of course, the number at the center of the Skull and Bones logo. But in reverse, Cape Town, South Africa also has Gematria of 295. The numbers 223 and 322 both have matching 295 Gematria with Skull and Bones Society and Skull and Bones. On the date that Jordan Grand Prix won their last ever race in Formula One, Eddie Jordan, the team owner, was 20,095 days old. And on top of that, it was also the first day in the 2095th week since Michael Jordan was born. Now, Michael Jordan is the winner of a whopping 6 NBA championships. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Eddie Jordan died 6 days after the huge Pi Day eclipse. And just a refresher for anyone who missed my last few videos, this here is the massive connection between the Pope and Michael Jordan. 314 and 62 and 26. Jordan born 26 years and 62 days after the Pope and was 62 years and 26 days old for the Pi Day eclipse, which had 62 and 26 numerology to match his name. Well, when you measure from the birthday of Eddie Jordan to Pope Francis's birthday, you get 262 days, the same digits. On top of that, their birthdays are also separated by a span of 3 months and 14 days apart. So essentially the same alignments that connect Michael Jordan to the Pope are also found in the measurements from Eddie Jordan to the Pope and his birthday. So now let's talk about the number in the headline, 76. And this is a number I was telling my fellow racing fans in Discord about in the lead up to the race. Back in the year 2023, Yale, home to Order 322, turned 322 years old. Skull and Crossbones equals 223. Now, anyone who believes this is a coincidence might as well turn the video off right now. If you measure from this date, October 9th of 2023, to the date of the race on Sunday in China, notice how this is exactly a span of 76 weeks after that special anniversary. And we know this is an important number to Skull and Bones, which has 76 Gematria, as does the phrase secret society with the S exception. In that same reverse reduction cipher, the name Michael Jordan also equals 76, matching his age. When Michael Jordan was born, Eddie Jordan was 776 weeks and 6 days old. The phrases human sacrifice and blood sacrifice both equal 76. With prime numbers, the word pi also equals 76. And isn't it interesting that Jordan Grand Prix won their first ever race in August of 1998? Well, Michael Jordan won the 6th of his 6 championships in June of 1998. That Grand Prix weekend began 76 days after Jordan's final championship. And we'll also talk about how this is synced up with the Pope, who became the head of the Catholic Church at the age of 76. This weekend's race in China is exactly 1,776 weeks after Jordan Grand Prix's first race back in 1991. So, no question about it, this story right here is absolutely connected to the Pi Day lunar eclipse that just happened. And, you know, being an F1 fan now myself, I feel like I almost should have seen this coming, especially since he was sick, but I don't exactly follow the personal lives of all these guys, so misses will be made. So next up, let's connect this to the Pope. Now, in the alphabetic order, the Pope equals 85. And Francis is the first ever Pope to be a Jesuit. And notice how a Jesuit also happens to equal 85. Well, the 85th prime number is 439. Eddie Jordan died 4,390 days after Francis became the Pope. Eddie was born 11 years, 104 days after Pope Francis. Notice how Eddie's full name, Edmund Patrick Jordan, sums to 114. When he died, Eddie was 28,114 days old. And this weekend's Grand Prix in China falls exactly 1,014 weeks after Jordan Grand Prix's last race in China back in 2005. Jordan Grand Prix went defunct in 2006. However, the the infrastructure for the team remained intact and is still being used to this day for the Aston Martin team. That team is owned by billionaire Lawrence Stroll, who is 114 days before his birthday today. So how do we know that this is all tied in so intricately to the Jesuit order and the Pope? Well, we saw the 114 on the right side of your screen, but look at these numbers. Edmund Patrick Jordan has Gematria of 201 and 312. These are the same digits found in the Gematria of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, also 201 and 312. But it's this 201 we always focus on when talking about the Jesuits. The Jesuit order also equals 201, so do two of its founders' names, Ignatius of Loyola and Francis Xavier. Bergoglio even lives in Suite 201 at the Domus Sanctae Marthae at the Vatican. Well, also notice how the name Edmund Patrick Jordan equals 84 in reduction. 84 like Jesuit in ordinal. The Jesuit order also 84. In fact, the Jesuits, another 84 in reverse Sumerian. Well, Pope Francis was born on a date with primary numerology of 84, syncing up very neatly, again, with Eddie Jordan's full name. Using the Fibonacci method, Edmund Patrick Jordan also equals 1217. Well, 1217 is the birthday of the Pope, December 17th. Also, if you exclude his middle name, Edmund Jordan gives us another 201 in reverse. But this number 84, found in his name, this brings us back to Latin Gematria, which I flashed on the screen earlier, but is what I truly believe to be the most significant cipher, especially since it provides such large numbers. And here we see total lunar eclipse equals 804. When Francis was elected Pope, it was 8,040 days after Jordan Grand Prix's first race in the sport. That's also 22 years and 4 days, matching the Society of Jesus and 3.14. Now, don't forget, Michael Jordan is also coded with Jesus numbers. Notice how Jesus of Nazareth equals 188 in ordinal. Air Jordan's full name, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, equals 188. And as far as this 217 in reverse for Jesus of Nazareth, Michael Jordan was born on 217. So it's very logical for him to be connected to this Jesuit Pope, the Society of Jesus. Well, his birthday, 217, also connects to the number 312. In the alphabetic order, 312 sums to 217, matching Jordan's birthday. This is important because the number 312 is the area code for Chicago, Illinois, the city that Jordan made NBA royalty during his time there. With reverse caps, the city of Chicago, Illinois even has gematria of 312. Well, you may have noticed this earlier because the name Edmund Patrick Jordan, Eddie Jordan's full name, sums to 312. So does the Pope's name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, 312. Well, Eddie Jordan, whose name equals 312, was born during Brown lunation 312. His Formula One team's name, Jordan Grand Prix, sums to 173. Pope Francis was born during Brown lunation 173. And I always thought this is interesting because the phrase Brown lunation equals 173. Well, Brown lunation also equals 178. And Eddie Jordan was born 178 months before Michael Jordan. 178 is also the gematria of both the moon and moon. And when you look at the lunar age of Eddie Jordan, again, we often measure from synodic months or sidereal months. These measure both lunar phases and lunar orbits, the latter of which is a couple of days shorter than the former. Michael was born exactly 199 lunar orbits after Eddie Jordan. And the name Jordan has gematria of 199 with capital letters. And Jordan Grand Prix entered Formula One after the 1990 season. When Jordan Grand Prix made its debut, load this in the grid real quick. Michael Jordan, the basketball player, who once again owns his own racing team himself now, Michael Jordan was 28 years and 3 weeks old exactly when Eddie's team first raced. Well, 283 is simply the Latin gematria of the moon. Now, intriguingly, this same measurement is also 1,248 days, which happens to match the gematria of Eddie Jordan, 1248 in Sumerian. Back in April of 2024, the shadow of the moon raced across the United States, entering in Texas and leaving in Maine. Eddie died a span of 347 days after that eclipse. That's the reverse value of Skull and Bones' nickname, the Brotherhood of Death, 347 in reverse. Look at Michael Jordan's lunar age on that same debut date for Jordan GP. Michael was exactly 347 lunar phases old. In ancient Hebrew gematria, this is an important number for sacrifice. The word for sacrifice, or immolate, a biblical word, summing to 347. This is also a prime number, by the way. 347, the 69th prime. The word eclipse equals 69. He died the 69th prime number of days after the eclipse. Catholic Church also gives us the 69. So does the Jesuit order, another 69. And again, it's all about the pi day eclipse. Circles equals 69, so does the word pi. And again, dead 6 days after the pi day eclipse, like how Jordan won 6 championships. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Jordan Grand Prix's first win was just a couple of months after Michael Jordan's last championship. That win, the maiden win, was at the chaotic and insane 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. If you're a racing fan who actually prefers crashes over racing, I suggest you watch the highlights for this race. Basically, the green flag drops, and pretty much everyone almost dies immediately. I mean, thankfully no one did, but it was just pure chaos. And it turns out Jordan Grand Prix would get the win in that race. Well, that race was on August 30th, or 8:30. Jordan Grand Prix equals 83. The team's owner went on to die in Cape Town, South Africa, another 83. Of course, 83 also the gematria of murder, so this is a common number we see in stories of death. Well, let's look at Michael Jordan's lunar age for Eddie's passing. exactly 830 lunar orbits. The word moon also equals 83 with capital letters. At its equator, the moon is 2,160 miles across, just about exactly. Jordan Grand Prix got their first win 2 months and 16 days after Michael Jordan's last championship. And the 216th prime number is 1321. This matches the Latin value of Edmund Patrick Jordan, 1321. Now, one thing I skipped over earlier, which I should have mentioned, we started out this video talking about the number 23. And it just so happens that the year 2003, which was also Michael Jordan's last year in the NBA, was also when Jordan Racing got their last victory. And now that I'm thinking of it, I bet these dates are insanely close. And look at this, April 6th of 2003, dude. So let's say, when did Michael Jordan play his last NBA game? April 16th, 10 days after Jordan Grand Prix's last win. Huh. April 16th, and it was April 6th, just 10 days earlier, that they stood atop the podium for the final time. Incredible. Also, Eddie Jordan was born in Dublin, Ireland, and notice how Dublin equals 62 and 26. Dublin, Ireland, another 62. This all ties into the big 262, 314 riddle that we peeked at the beginning of the video. There's a few more things I have listed in my blog post, but I guess I just want to take a couple of glances at another post I made yesterday. And this is a little bit of a numerical preview for this weekend's Chinese Grand Prix. I made this post before learning about Eddie's death. And the favorite going into the race is Lando Norris. Lando got the win last week. McLaren looks like by far the fastest car on the field, aside from maybe whatever car Verstappen is driving. And Lando is even money this weekend, which is really, really bad odds for a 20-car race. However, he does have a lot of intriguing numbers that connect. For instance, when you look at Lando Norris's lunar age for the Grand Prix on Sunday, he'll be exactly 339 lunar orbits old. In the reverse standard method, Chinese Grand Prix equals 3309. And the track that the race is held at is 3.39 miles long. Now, this week, Donald Trump promised the release of all of the JFK files. And if you're wondering why I don't sound absolutely thrilled, it's because I, like many of you watching, know that it's going to be a big nothing burger. No world-shaking secrets are going to be written down in a document for people to disclose at a later date. It's just not how the world is run. However, the JFK riddle is very strong this week, and I believe that this weekend's races will be tied. Notice how the races this weekend fall on Sunday, the 23rd of March, 23/3. This is the ordinal gematria of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, 233 in the alphabetic order. Now, this race is held 35 weeks before the anniversary of JFK's murder. And think about it, JFK, the 35th president. The race has a life lesson number of 35. JFK was the first Catholic president, 35. And this race is being held in China, which equals 35. It'll also be exactly 350 days after the Great American Eclipse. It's also 35 weeks after the anniversary of the eclipse that passed over Wuhan, China. Now, Wuhan, China is allegedly where the COVID-19 bug originated. Both Wuhan and COVID-19 sum to 67, which is interesting because that's the 19th prime number. COVID-19. Well, this weekend's race will be held in Shanghai, which also equals 67. And not only is the race 67 days before JFK's birthday, but it's also a span of 6 years and 7 days after Lando Norris entered the sport. Now, if JFK were still alive, he'd be pretty frail, and also he'd be turning 108 years old. And this race is the 18th Chinese Grand Prix. It'll be exactly 18 lunar phases after Skull and Bones' big anniversary. And it's also the 180th prime number of weeks to the first ever Chinese Grand Prix. And JFK equals 18, while China equals the 18th prime number. Sunday is also 3,200 weeks and 2 days after JFK was assassinated for the 322. It'll be 322 days after Lando Norris's first ever F1 win. And we also have a new movie coming out this weekend. The new Snow White film, a recreation of a major Disney classic. Well, F1 will be racing not far from Shanghai Disneyland, which opened 3,202 days before this weekend's race. Snow White equals 136 in ordinal, and this brings us to another riddle with Max Verstappen, whose name equals 136. Verstappen born on a 136 date numerology, a number connected to the Jesuits' 136. Also, Lando has that number. Well, Max won his first ever race on the 136th day of a leap year, and when lights go out on Sunday, Verstappen will be 10,036 days old. So it seems like he could very well be on the podium as well. Max dominated both races in China last year. There's also an interesting riddle connected to the Williams racing team, who seems to be back in the hunt for podiums with the signing of Carlos Sainz. And also notice how the numbers of pi are found when measuring from JFK to Lando Norris. JFK, the Catholic president, Catholic 314, while Roman Catholic is 1314. Lando Norris born 13,140 days after the assassination. And both Lando and Lando Norris equals 314. Lando gets his name from Star Wars. Lando Calrissian. Well, Lando was born in the same year as the new Star Wars movie, Phantom Menace, which turns 310 months and 4 days old for the race. And the race is also exactly 314 weeks after Lando's debut. So yeah, there's more on this, but I encourage you to check the blog out if you want to do a deeper dive. The number 323, also super significant. All in connection with the Catholic Church and the Vatican. It's pretty overwhelming. So, I mean, the numbers do point to Lando. Then again, I said the numbers point to Oscar Piastri last weekend because of the riddle with the South African sprinter. However, we instead got the death of a former F1 team owner in South Africa. So again, Gematria is not something that's, always black and white. We're looking at essentially the geometry of creation itself. And our human brains aren't made to wrap our heads around what's happening. However, we certainly are intelligent enough to catch the patterns that are going on and be able to tell that, indeed, we are living in some sort of computerized superstructure, as I like to say. You know, I don't like calling things the Matrix or a simulation. You know, to me, those words don't really mean much. But it does appear that this realm is mechanical in nature. It's a machine that just keeps going, and the sun, the moon, the earth, and the geometry of those bodies, in addition to the other planets, seem to be of utmost importance in scripting the lives that we all live here. All right, everybody. So with all of that, that'll do it for this video. R.I.P. to Eddie Jordan. Seemed to be a lovable character, a fellow Irishman. Of course, I'm only a quarter Irish, but you know, that's what we Americans are. We're a bunch of mutts over here, with all our mixed heritage. All right, everyone. Peace, love, God bless. Talk to you next time. See ya.